46. Page 46.
You want to go?
Miss Regents, can you post the Bible video?
I will.
Mm-hmm.
46. What she said, no? Yeah. What she said, what?
Miss Connie will use it. And Miss Connie will let the MS sauce.
Oh, so. Thank you. Right, 46.
46.
All right, let's get started. All right, Kenley. What is it? Meeting summer.
It's a horse. It's a horse story.
How y'all know?
I read it.
All right, 46. Go ahead.
Maddie's first hit the ground and dust flew around her feet. She looked up and saw long wooden fences and wide open fields next to the big red barn. Where are we, Mom? She asked. Almost as soon as she asked Mom the question, she heard a soft whine coming from the shed. Horses. Her oldest sister Hannah asked, "Is that a surprise, Mom?" "Yes, Mom," said with a smile. "Yes, Mom," said with a smile. "Dad has a friend who owns his horse ranch. He invited us for a visit."
That's good. All right, so the star of my story is Maddie. Okay. And so where are they, her and her parents or her family at the end of the story? Well, what did she hear?
Horses,
Horses, right? So she found out that they were on a what?
farm.
Not a farm, but a horse ranch. Okay, that they were gonna go visit. Okay. Place horses.
Like pet the horses? Kelly, stop. "I'll race you to the stable," said Maddie's older brother David. "Hold on," said Mom. "You need to be calm around the horses. You might scare them. Walk with me." They all walked down the hill to the stable. A tall man with a wide brim hat came out to greet them. Maddie watched him walk up and through the look.
Oh, you can still do your work though. You can still do your work.
He looked like a cowboy. His thick leather boots crunched in the dirt as he walked.
All right, so they go to the stables where oh yeah, they go to the stables where they see the horses, right? And so what did they have to make sure to be what?
Careful.
Well, not calm. They have to be calm because what could they do?
Scare the horses.
They could potentially scare the horses, right? So they're walking around. Okay, 48, 48 and 49, 48. Taylor. Oh, Faith, 48.
there and with a wide smile. I'm Mr. Tucker. Welcome to the ranch in Maddie, Hannah, and David to the man while he guided them towards the they came
Did you finish your math from yesterday?
the stable.
Did you finish your math pages from yesterday?
Okay.
Okay.
He stepped into the doorway of the slowly around leather straps hung on the wall, and bags of oats were attacked or snapped near the door. Before he could look up, a tall black horse gave a loud whoop that her jump. Maddie quickly ran to her mom. Mr. Tucker shuffled and said, "Oh, don't let Bruno scare you. Scare you!" This
Stop being dramatic.
to say hello.
Because it's not even your story.
And the back that the top of his legs were taller than Maggie's head. She decided to stay close to her mom.
Okay, good. All right, Carson.
Maybe right.
What?
And Mr. Tucker, I don't put the saddle on one of the horse for you. Which one would you like to ride? At all the horses. There were at least 6 horses trying to separate stalls. I looked like one over there with a gray mane. Good choice. Asper is a fun horse to ride. Then Mr. Tucker. He loves to run. May I ride Bruno? Asked David. And you can, but be careful. He's very strong. Mr. Tucker said. But then he looked toward Maddie, who was still holding Mom's arm. Would you like to ride with Maddie? He asked. Maddie please shook her head. She was too scared to touch a horse, much less ride. Mr. Tucker smiled. He understood that she was afraid.
All right. All right, 51, Avaya.
If you change your mind, let me know, Mr. Tucker said as he plopped his big hat on her head. Maddie tilted the hat up so she could see. Mr. Tucker put saddles on 2 horses and strapped saddles down so they wouldn't move. Then Maddie watched Hannah and David climb on the horses' backs and trot into the log pen. Manny sat down on a haystack near one of the pins. Hannah and David looked like they were having fun as their horses pranced around the pen. Maddie wished she were brave enough to get on a horse.
All right, good. 52, Dennis. Dennis, unmute. We can't hear.
On 52? On 52, Miss Prudence?
Yes, 52.
As she sat there thinking, she felt a tug on the big hat shoes her. She turned slowly to the horse's logs smuggles. Maddie jumped up and faced the golden-colored horse. But the horse stood still patiently, waiting for Maddie to come near again. Maddie stepped closer and put her hand up to touch the horse. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She hoped the horse would not bite her. The horse stayed very still and let Maddie stroke her white.
Okay, 53, Joshua.
53.
Yep.
Okay. The horse seemed to like Maddie, and she began to relax. I see you found summer, said Mr. Tucker. She's the sweetest horse I have, and she's very gentle. Maddie nodded with a smile. Would you like to try to ride her? Asked Mr. Tucker. Okay, said Maddie. Summer wasn't quite as tall as Bruno or Jasper. She was just the right size for Maddie. Of Mr. Tucker strapped on Summer's saddle and helped Maddie up onto her back. Maddie held on tight as Mr. Tucker led Summer to the pen. For long, Maddie wasn't afraid anymore. She laughed and held as Summer trotted around the pen. Maddie couldn't believe that she had almost missed out on the fun. She decided to riding horses was her new favorite thing to do, and she would come back to visit Summer as often as she could. What up, bye? Done.
All right. Next page. Okay, so they went to the stable to visit the horses. They were told that they had to be very calm so they wouldn't scare them. Okay, and so Mr. Tucker was the rancher, the man who had the horses. Okay, and so they went, like in the stable. Hay and leather, right? Okay, and so they run into their first Bruno. They run into Bruno. What color was he?
Black.
He was black. He was a big horse. He was black.
Black, strong, and tall.
Yes, black, strong, and tall. Okay, and so there were other horses over there. Which one did he like?
Summer.
The white one? The white one, yeah. So whenever they asked for them to ride the horses, what did she say?
No.
Maddie said no, she was allergic. Okay, so she kind of sat there, thought about it. So then, yeah, then the summer came to her, would pet her and get closer to her, and that horse seemed to like Maddie a lot more. Okay, was she still afraid?
No.
No. So it was nice they went to the stable.
Science.
All right, get out your science. Did you finish your math?
Miss Flugent,
Yes.
I used the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, science and social studies. All right, so our science, page 104. So this week our lesson is on scientists and what scientists do and how they work. So a lot of things, a lot of reasons we are aware of a lot of things is because scientists, they took their time to study a lot of these things. They did their investigation, their study, their experimenting, and they shared it with the world. And that's why we know, like when we learned about, just the bones, just all of these things we learned about in science, we're able to learn those things because of scientists. So scientists will study in different places. It just depends on what they are studying. So before, on page 105, how scientists work, before they even come out with a discovery that they might have made, they have to follow what's called the scientific method. The scientific method is a step-by-step process that they'll go through, that they'll follow in order to determine how something works and whether or not an opinion they may have is actually a truth. Okay, so the scientific method is 4 steps that they go through when trying to figure out something. So the first thing they do is they observe and ask questions. So whatever it is that they're trying to study, they will observe it, watch it, look at it, and ask questions about it. Like, okay, if I do this, will it do this? If I do that, will it do this? Does this work? Does this not work? They just ask several different questions just based upon what they're studying. Once they ask their question and they make their observations, then they will guess and predict. Then they will start to guess, like, okay, well, maybe if we do this, then this will happen. They make predictions and they write it down. So they guess and predict. A prediction is a guess, like you predict. Like say if there's a jar of candy and you say, I think there's 500 candy in it, you know what I'm saying? That's a prediction. It may be right, it may not be right. So that's what they do. So on page 106, to figure out if their guesses and predictions are correct, they will then experiment. They will perform experiments. What? You got your hand up, right? At all? They will then experiment and gather data. So they'll start to experiment. And so they'll run different types of experiments. They'll try to gather all kinds of information. They'll write it down. So they'll say, okay, when we perform this experiment, this happened. And then when we perform this experiment, that happened. So that's what the process they'll go through, where they'll go through all the different experiments. So they observe and ask questions, they make predictions and guesses, then they conduct experiments, they gather the data, the information from their experiments, and then they study it to make sure it's accurate, and then they share it, because you wouldn't want to share something that's not accurate, right? You wouldn't want to share something that isn't true. So this is the scientific method, the 4 step-by-step process they go through. So let's look at 107 and let's number them 1, 2, 3, and 4. So which one would be number 1? What's the first thing scientists do?
Scientists observe and ask questions.
Yes, scientists observe and ask questions. That's the first thing they do. Do you need to go to the bathroom? You don't need to go. What you need is? Everybody hear him say no, right? He didn't have a pencil because he threw it.
Because Henry just touched it. Ew. Oh my God. My phone is full. Go get your don't even more.
Okay, what would be number two? So number one, after they observe and ask questions,
They guess
Science-
and predict.
scientists guess and predict. That's number two.
And then they experiment and gather data.
I know. It's all that's one of the stuff that's friends. Music. It's not exactly. I moved to New Jersey. It's not exactly, but
Number three, what would be three?
They experiment and gather data.
Scientists experiment and gather data or data. That's what I am.
How's this doing this thing?
And then obviously the fourth thing would be scientists study data
Studying
and
that.
share it. All right, let's go to 110.
I'm tired of people.
Okay, so some scientists work in different places. Most people, when we think of scientists, we think about a lab. And while some scientists do work in labs, not all work in labs, because some scientists will study in different places. Like I said on yesterday, when we studied the habitats, right? In order for us to find out all the information that we learned about the habitat, someone had to study it and figure that out. So scientists will study in different places. It just depends on what they're studying, and that will determine where they will study. So 111, we then talked about some of the tools that scientists will use. Of course, we know they need a pen and a paper to write down their experiments, write down their data, write down all of those things. They need a hand lens to kind of look closer at things if they're studying outside in nature. They might need a microscope to look at really tiny things that you can't see with the human eye, but you can see with the microscope. They need a telescope. Those that study space and things like that, they'll need a telescope. Okay, on 112, a ruler, of course, to measure things, a scale to weigh things, a beaker to measure liquid. They measure liquid in a beaker, a thermometer to measure the temp of things, and then a stopwatch to stop time. Okay, so on 113, we talked about science safety, how it is important to be safe whenever you are conducting experiments and things like that, wearing goggles, washing your hands. Sometimes you may need to wear gloves, but it's important to be safe when conducting experiments. Okay, so let's answer the questions on 113. Okay, so number one, where do scientists do their work?
In the lab.
Or different place, the places they're studying. So they do their work in a lab or in a place they're studying. Okay, number 2, why do you think scientists sometimes work in the place they are studying?
So they can study it.
Obviously to gather the right information, right? To study it, of course. Yes, fine. Yeah, stop. Stop. Okay, number 3, what do scientists use to study something far away in space? Go look for it then in your book instead of guessing.
A telescope.
Telescope. They'll use a telescope. T-E-L-E, telescope.
That's what I didn't even need to spell it. It's Telescope.
E.
Okay, Telescope.
Okay. And then 4, what tool does a scientist use to measure the temperature? Thermometer.
No, not the thermometer. T-O-C-R-M-O-M-E.
Okay. 5. Stop. What does a scientist use to protect their eyes? Goggles. All right, and go to 114 and go ahead and match the name of the tool to the name. You can do that now on 114. Okay, did y'all get it? Yeah? All right, let's go to our social studies. Page 125. Page 125. Cattle drives. 125.
Well, we definitely don't have.
So she's pulling her thing. That's what I just said. Okay, cattle drives, okay? All right, so if you remember, we discussed how cattle ranching became a popular thing after the invention of the railroad. A business of owning cattle was started. A lot of ranchers would find cattle and they would make their own cattle ranches, right? They hired cowboys to take care of the cattle. So what they would do is they would have these cattle drives where they would push their cows to go to the east. Please hold on 1 second. So yes, so they would often bring their cattle to the east, and it was the cowboys' job to get the cattle safely to the east, and they would go on these cattle drives. The cattle drives would usually take them like 4 months to get them from the west all the way to the east. So during this time of cattle drives, there were cow towns that would pop up, and these cow towns were usually towns where there were a lot of cows, and you could usually buy and you would bring the cows to these cow towns because the train would come to pick up the cows in that particular cow town. So one famous cow town was Dodge City, Kansas. It was a very famous cow town where a lot of people would use that. A lot of the cows would be picked up in that town. Okay, so the cattle at that town, the cows at that time were called longhorns because obviously on 125 you can see he has really long horns. Okay, 126. So the rancher would travel with them as well in the cattle drive, right? Because he was the owner of the cattle, so usually he would do a lot of the business negotiations type thing. But the cowboys, they would also travel as well, and their job was to keep the cattle safe during this cattle drive because it could be like 20, 30, 40, 50 cows in one herd. So it was important that the cowboys kept them where they needed to go. They guided the cows, they showed them where to go. You know, they did all of that. So the cowboys' job was very important. So it would be the cowboys, the rancher would travel, and they would also have a cook that would come with them as well because they would be 4 months on the road. So they would have a chuck wagon, which was like a little kitchen on wheels, and the cook would come and cook for them. They would often eat bacon, beans, and bread the whole time they were doing this cattle drive. But also they had enough beef, right? Because they had so many cows. So they also would have enough beef to eat as well along with that. So the cowboys would ride all day, and because they would have to ride all day taking care of the cows, they would often bring like 3 different horses at a time. So since they were taking care of the cows, they needed someone to take care of their horses. So the cowboys would hire wranglers. The wrangler's job was to take care of the horses. So they would be like a group of you would have the rancher, the cook, the cowboys, and then the wranglers. They would all be together traveling on this cattle drive. So also during the cattle drive on 127, it was also important that the cowboy ensured that there wouldn't be a stampede, right? Because a stampede can be very dangerous. It can be very scary, and things can happen during a stampede. So and any little thing would set a cow off because they get scared pretty easily, right? It can just be a sudden sound, someone talking, thunder, just anything like that could cause a stampede. So it was important that the cowboy tried to keep the cattle safe from a stampede as well because of how dangerous it could be. So when they would finally arrive in a cow town, they would put they would put the cattle on the train, and the train would then take the cattle to the east wherever they had to go. Okay. All right, let's go to 129 and let's answer our questions. So do you remember true or false? True means yes, false means no, it's not true. right, so number one, Dodge City, Kansas was a famous cow town. True or false? True. Okay, two, the cowboys soothed the cattle at night by talking softly around them. No, the book did not say that. That's false. Number two. That's false. Number three, when the cattle reached the cow town, the cowboys took them to the ranches that were close by. Is that true? No, that's not what happened when they would get in the cow town. That's not what happened. They would put them on a train. Okay, four, a clap of thunder or a loud voice could start a stampede. That is true. And five, a cattle drive usually took 4 weeks. False, not 4 weeks. I said 4
It took 4
months.
months.
Yeah. Yeah, I might put this question on the test because we got it wrong. He did. All right, good guys. So good. So let's go ahead. That's your science, social studies. Make sure you review your test is on Friday. Let's go ahead and go over math, and then we'll be done. All right. Let's cover a couple of things on the board. So let's round. Remember, guys, when we round, we're rounding a number to our nearest 10. We have a number and 2 10s on the outside. So 68, what is our closest 10 that 68 would be? 70.
Oh, I say.
What about 31? What's our closest 10 to 31? 30. 44, what's our closest 10? 40. And 92, what's our closest 10? 90, good. All right. Raising your hand, guys. What will be the digital date for September 4th, 2015? What's my digital date? September 4th, 2015. 9/4/15. Good. And the perimeter.
And this one?
Okay. So I measured each side, correct?
Yes.
So how do I figure out the perimeter?
Put it together. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5.
I add them all up. 5 plus 5
Equals 20.
would equal what?
20.
20 what?
25.
20 meters. My perimeter is 20 meters. Okay, let's multiply. 2 times 2 is
4.
4. 5 times 2, 10. 3 times 10,
30.
30. 7 times 5.
35.
All right, I need someone. I have a square. Can you divide it into 6?
I want to do it.
6. Okay.
Daddy. Go on. I do circle. I know what's this one? Okay,
Yeah.
can I do circle? I'm doing the circle. Divided in what's the divided?
6.
Do my face like yeah. Dancing in the camera. This
Okay, let me pack everything out. You need to find some studies experience and make them.
family.
All right. All right, my circle. Remember how I divide my circles into fourths?
Yes, you are.
This is the triangle.
Into four? Okay. Yeah, for me, I got 5 of them. You got
And then triangle divided into halves.
over. Okay.
Alright.
Everything 2 months. For 2 months. And it's all, like, they not. Oh, yeah, I need to pay a pay.
Alright.
You said half.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And that was very. No, it's. Well, it was. That's. What is it?
Please, alright, stop.
What's
What did you say? Are you? Okay, good. Alright, next, 512 plus 348. I'm gonna embarrass to work it out for us.
You're not paying attention.
Okay, Dennis?
2 plus 8 equals 10. Carry the 1.
Okay.
2 plus 4 equals 6.
Uh-huh.
5 plus 3 equals 8.
Good. $8.
800.
Alright, subtraction, 725, $7.25, and 51. Okay, Mariah, did you come to the shape? Oh, did you do a shape?
Everything can say but take.
Well, come subtract this one.
You did it right. Look, you could have. I'll just do it. Okay, 5. Okay, you got No, I think it's different. Whatever.
Well, you'll stop. Okay, 5 minus 1 is 4, 2 minus 9 we can't do it. So we need a trade. Take 10 from 7 becomes 6. And 12 and 12 minus 9 is 3. Oh, that's 12 minus 9. It should be a 3. What is right? This is what number 3.
And 4, and 5. It'll be here for 4 to 5. I could be here.
Alright, okay. Alright, guys. That's it. We covered all we needed to cover. Y'all have a good afternoon. I will see you guys tomorrow for Bible and our finding session tomorrow, okay? Bye-bye.